Today is Friday the 13th. I thought I'd give you a nice little treat to start off the devlog from the standard Saturday or Sunday morning by starting the video with no other day than today. That is right, I should be working right now, but instead, it's Friday the 13th. For those new to the devlog, the name's TheOdie, and I'm making a horror game called The Haunting of the Jill Wilson family. As you can imagine, it follows a family haunted by a supernatural entity, and takes inspiration from several films I've seen when I was younger, which really kicked me off in the horror genre that I love today. That said, sit back, relax, or toss me on the side while you develop your own game, and enjoy. It's Friday the 13th. Are you feeling the energy? The terrifying terrors, the horrifying horrors. I took the day off to do this vlog and surprise you guys for Friday the 13th. Okay, no, I'm just kidding. It's there's actually my friend's wedding today. It's in the early evening, so I decided to take the day off. I don't actually take the day off on Friday the 13th to celebrate whatsoever, and if anyone does, then that's a little bit questionable. You're a little bit questionable, but you do you, and I hope there's a good story for why you do. I'm kidding. Anyway, we're back at it at the devlogs. It's been some time since I've last done vlogs. I've been doing several tutorials, so if you haven't seen any of those, then do check it out. But interestingly enough, the demo did just release 2 days before this very vlog, and so far the comments has been very kind. Thank you guys. Seriously, thank you guys so much for playing, giving it a shot. I know it's only 20 minutes or less, and for that reason, some people may think, oh, I don't really want to go through the download for a 20-minute game, but at the same time, I'm also hoping it's short enough where people are willing to give it a little bit of a chance. But yeah, thank you guys. Anyway, we're back in it, into the main game, and it actually feels really weird. It's like, because I was focusing on the demo kind of had its own story, its own narrative, its own path, its own objective, that now that I've jumped back in here, I kind of feel like I'm working on a whole nother game completely, even though it's literally from the demo version to this version, and I think it's being mainly because the demo contains its own exclusive content that's outside of this game, even though it still runs in parallel with the main story. Just all these oddities. Anyway, now I gotta try and remember where I left off, and from what I remember, it was there a closet scene where a terrifying terror occurred. But anyway, now the player is going to be playing as Maisie, and the next major scene is that there's going to be an interaction between the two kids. They're going to have a bit of a play session, and they're actually going to do a tea party. As childish and almost lame as that can sound, but they are of the very young age, between 5 to 10, and we're also in the 70s here, so they're not exactly just playing some video games together. It's much, well, not really much before those times, but fairly before. Oh my god, my light has died. It's Friday the 13th. But anyway, as I was saying, I do want to capture like the innocence of childhood and make it accurate to the 70s. And I'm like, what did I do as a kid? Having an older brother. Yeah, we played often. We played a lot of video games. We played outside. But now I gotta think differently, where it's a sister and a brother, and the older sister kind of leads the games and all that sort of thing. So I figured, a tea party. I do have it all scripted out. There are some hauntings that occur during said tea party, but that is a little bit ahead of where what I'm doing right now. At the moment, I do have to section off portions of where the main player can travel so that the story can unfold properly, but also at the same time to give them new maps in a sort of exploration sort of way as the game continues in progress. And then also what I want to do is create some sort of like text or examinable for all the different things, because each of the family member, similar to the demo, is going to examine and have their own thought process behind everything. Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna get started on that, and guess we'll see how far this devlog goes. So to rephrase what I mentioned, I want each character to have their own opinion on an object. I also want those characters to have new opinions each day and in every scene. I find that it creates a uniqueness to them that isn't emphasized by the plot of the game, but instead builds upon the world and their relationships with others or other objects just inside of it. There's a game I played a few years ago called AI Somnium Files. It's an excellent escape room / point and click / visual novel. It's completely voiced and the concept does pretty much the same thing. It even went as far as to have a series of dialogue options for each object before being completely exhausted. As a person who came from mostly handheld games and indie horror games, usually the prompts I would get are single worded like a portrait, or it's a painting of a dog, or the best one, empty. I can get it because sometimes pixels can be difficult to interpret by some, or the game just wants you to get straight to the point to playing the main plot. But in a narrative game like the one I'm making, and especially a game with some exploration, I want to gift the player who enjoy exploration, and give them the much wanted Easter eggs they are searching for. Decided to cook myself a proper breakfast for perhaps the first time in the entire devlog series. But once you see it, you're gonna be like, oh, you know what? This makes sense. In 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it's not that great looking, huh? I got protein flapjacks, some sausages, and scrambled eggs, with a side of coffee, some honey, and some soy milk. I don't know if it's just a protein consistency, but the pancakes, man. This one's not even a circle. Anyway, I decided to save you guys the fun part. Here we go. Ooh. And now my camera's about to run out of batteries, so bye guys. We're back in this. But I guess first I should let you guys know how the wedding went last night. It was absolutely gorgeous. It was at a wine and distillery, and it was also a Lord of the Rings theme. It wasn't too over the top, like there wasn't any role playing or anything like that, but instead it was more thematic. Our tables was like a location from the movies. We had these nice cool little name cards, and funny enough, one of our friends actually made all of the decor through a makerspace that he's part of, so it's really cool. Oh yeah, they cut the cake with a sword. All really cool things. A huge congratulations and best wishes to the newlyweds. Alright, now with that said, let's hop back into the game dev. So I actually remade the picture portraits for Tommy and Maisie, and my god, it's a little bit of nightmare fuel. But here we go. Boom. Baby pictures! Because all families have some form of that. But here, I thought this was hilarious. Mommy said I was the cutest baby. Dun, dun. Tommy in particular. It's like he's staring into your soul. So, the plan for today is to start tackling that tea party. I got my script over here. It's very short, but as you can see from the paragraph, stuffs will happen. Don't look too long because they are spoilers. But to fully dish it out, I have to create a couple more assets. I gotta create some stuffed animals. I gotta create the stuffed animals at the table. I gotta create Maisie and Tommy at the table. I'm pretty sure I said this in one of the previous devlogs, but art, I can't escape it with every devlog I do. The good news is that I think I created most of them, and it's mostly just cutting and pasting them into the right spots. But let's not delay, let's get to it. To start off, I created 4 animals for Maisie to choose from. The choice was pretty simple. I googled stuffed animals from the 70s and based my selection off those. All except for the cow. For some reason, cow was just the first thing that came to mind when I thought about stuffed animals. Whatever that means. Anyway, if you're new to the RPG Maker world, then you're probably just overlaying the character on top of a chair to make it look like they're sitting. And yeah, it does work and does visually imply that they are sitting, but if you are open to the idea of making custom pixels, then this is a great place to start. The difficulty isn't as hard as you think, and the payoff is quite charming in my opinion. Also, as someone who used to play a lot of indie horror games on RPG Maker on my channel, I can say that these small details do make your game stand out. Ta-da! What you think? Aren't they adorbs? So far, I already started scripting a bit of it, and then there's a little break for the player to have a bit of interaction, and I decided to bring that objective list back that you saw in the demo, and it's just so that the player knows what to do without Maisie having to talk to herself. Like, she's going to set up the table, grab a stuffed animal from the closet, and then decide the placement order for all of the seats. It's going to be her, one stuffed animal of her choice, Tommy, and one stuffed animal of his choice, which is Mr. Mustache. That's a name you're going to be hearing a lot more later on. And once I get to making him... No, I already made him. Let me show him. There's our boy, Mr. Mustache. So, one of the things, if you have not noticed from my past games, is that I really love giving the player the opportunity of choice. So like for Caster's Trap, pretty much the whole game was pretty open for the player to go and do the objectives that they need to do in their own way. There wasn't a direct path that led the player to go A, then B, then C, then D. It was more like you could do C first, then A, then B, and then you could eventually reach to Act 2 or whatever. And of course, it had the multiple true ends. Then I did it again with Captive You Are My Idol, where the player could either choose the path of observation or the path of deception, and of course some true ends in that game as well. But then for this game, I decided that I'll only have one true ending, but of course I do love giving the player the opportunity to choose different things, and this is my way of doing it, even though there is a more direct path of Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3. I want to add like little areas here and there in this narrative that the player can interact with, such as choosing their stuffed animal, deciding the seatment placement. It's a little bit more work on my end, and very likely the player will not replay it a second time to see the differences. So I decided that the differences won't be too big of a deal, but it will be neat to see them come back later in the game if I can plan it. Hopefully future me can remember this. Anyway, right now it is 11:30. I do have some plans for today. One of my friends is visiting the state, or I guess the city, just because of the wedding. So we decided to have a hangout day today. And then tomorrow is Father's Day. So I'll probably be poking at the game development a little bit in the morning, but probably not too much after that. But with that said, I will do whatever I can with the amount of time that I have and develop. For the most part, any sprite that's wider than 1 tile wide is something I considered a large sprite. And on that note, large sprites are a little bit unique. For example, say you have a 2-tile wide sprite. The center point of this 2-tile wide sprite will be the center of what tile it lays. I actually do a deep dive in a video that you see here. For the most part, it just means that if you are trying to offset from the center, then you have to make your tile even wider. Then adjust it to the left or right while remembering that the center of the sprite will line up with the center of the tile. So either crunch the numbers or do a bit of trial and error, especially when you're making a large sprite that sits on a chair. Roughly a day later, and check it out. I have essentially finished what I wanted and needed to do. Oh shoot. I forgot Mr. Moustache. God dang it. Look, it's kind of adorable. Here, I want to show you guys something. I thought it was just funny. It is a meeting of cows. Or mouse, or mice, or bears, or Tommies. So a lot of tedious work, but you know what? I think it's worth it. It adds a little bit of charm to the point where the player will see it and be like, oh, this is pretty cool. And you know what? That's all I need. The hard part though, or more like the trickier part, I don't think it will be that hard, just tricky, is being able to assign each character to each of the seats. And as you can tell by Maisie, her and Tommy will probably have a couple of different gestures throughout the scenes, and it's also figuring out which seat is Tommy and which seat is Maisie, and having them go through the motions. I'm thinking it might not be as difficult as I'm imagining it, because the way I created the character sheets does have them emote by turning left, and then that one is, well, turning from right to up, and same thing here. So maybe instead what I do is just I separate them into 4 different sheets, and I just tell the event to turn left rather than having to track which one is seated where and having them face a certain direction. That makes sense, right? So like if Maisie was here, she would be, say, this one, and then to make her raise her arms, she would turn left. And then the only thing I gotta do for the conditional branch is, based on which seat they are, just assign that graphic sheet. So if she's facing right, she'll have the right-sided graphic sheet. If she's on the top left, she'll have the top left facing graphic sheet. Oh man, yeah, I think we got it. That's easy peasy. Shall I say it? Lemon squeezy. I used to say that a lot when I did horror Let's Plays. If you dig deep enough for any of the new subscribers. But anyway, it's also Father's Day today, and it's almost 11 o'clock, which is about the time that I shall be leaving. My father is rather old now. He's in his late 70s, and we're just gonna do a family lunch for the most part. Just some takeout, eat together, chat a bit, and that's about all. Alright, so with that said, I'll see you guys probably next weekend. But I do have some fun and exciting news, which you will see later in this video, is that at the end of June, I have another One Piece Regionals. I'll be going to Toronto, and, well, it'll be hard. But wish me the best of luck. Alright, see you guys next weekend. So next weekend, I got a pretty big One Piece related trip coming up. I'll be going to Toronto for a huge tournament. It's known as the Regionals, and over 1,000 players will be there. This will be the leader that I'll be playing. Yeah! First time I didn't pull a fancy looking leader, so I'm just using a basic, lame, ugly one. But this is Luffy in his 4th gear, Snake Man, for those who've watched the anime. It's considered as the best deck in the current meta, so there's a chance I could do well, unless I just overall suck. But I imagine that I'll also be fighting a lot of people running the same leader, and a lot of decks that just counters it. Just because it is the best deck doesn't mean it's completely undefeatable. There's 2 decks known to counter it quite well, Bello Betty and Lucci, so pray I don't run into too many of those, or any at all. But here, check this out. So if I do well, this is what I'm basically competing in, this top one up here, Season 1. If I place very well, I can make it to the finals, and if I do very well in the finals, then I can make it to Worlds. And if you guys seen the first devlog, then you'd actually see me compete in finals of last season. But even though it's at Season 1, I know it's weird, but they just break the year up by 2 seasons, and then they just keep it like that, as opposed to a TV show where it's like Season 1, the next year Season 2, next year Season 3. But anyway, as it so happens, the finals is actually the same weekend as my friend's wedding. So even if I do place well, I won't be able to compete. And unfortunately, if you do well and receive your invite in Season 1, it does not qualify for Season 2. So I would have to compete again to try and make it to finals, because there's no way I can make it to Season 1 just because of my friend's wedding being the day before. But it's cool because I can still always compete for these fancy cards. There's the Nami, if I think it's top 64, somewhere up there. And then I think 16 is the Zoro, and then top 8 is the Sanji. And then Ace is, I think it's also top 8, but I probably have that top wrong. But something like that. Here it is for those who actually are curious. So, because of that, I've been doing the best I can to get ahead of the upload schedule. Decided that 2 tutorials will come up. I do have them all edited, and they're kind of just in the waiting room on YouTube, just waiting to get pushed out on the Thursday that they release. I'm still going to keep it every other week, so every 2 weeks. And the reason for that is so that I can have that weekend to go on the trip, come back, and continuing to work on the development of the game, and the devlogs, and the editing, and all of that. But anyway, I got some cool things to show you. Actually, not really. This whole week has just been editing videos and stuff like that. But I do know that I left off somewhere for you. And ta-da! I still have yet to make Mr. Mustache. But basically, they can be on any of these seats. Currently, it's Turtle on this seat, but he could still be on here, here, and I'm just going to make it as many possibilities as possible. And I think that really adds to the fun of this. So, plan is currently to make Mr. Mustache for all 4 sides, and then start scripting this out. Since you guys already see me do Turtle and all the other stuffed animals, I'll skip the making of Mr. Mustache and jump ahead to when we start scripting it out. Alright, that said, time to tuck in. This process actually came with plenty of challenges, and it all had to do with the player having too much freedom. First, there was deciding which stuffed animal Maisie will bring. Okay, well, that one was pretty easy. You just have a single variable, and each animal is an ID. For example, turtle is 0, cow is 1, so on and so forth. But here's the real challenge, and it's deciding which seat to be assigned to whom. Combine this with showing choices, and I think your mind has already wrapped around the pain involved here. In one option, the player has chosen Tommy on the left. On another, well, Tommy's on the right. If you already had your statistics class, then you probably remember this being something like x factorial. And yeah, the math here is 4 factorial, so 24 different choices, aka 24 different choices to create. But I don't really want to do that. So this is where plugins come in, specifically for conditional choices. Consider this foreshadowing. Alright guys, here we go. First test of the thing I made. Let's see it all work together. Okay, good. So far the scene has been set right. Ooh, this is where it gets scary. What the heck are you doing over there? First test of the thing I made. Alright, now everything should be set, and oh, thank God. We should... What should we play, Maisie? Oh God, you're floating. I know, how about tea? That game is boring. Oh, T should be capitalized. And I'll also explain that it's tea party. Oh God, I'm still dancing. Alright, so Maisie will stop dancing in the actual, but we're going to test everything else. Tommy really likes cars and blocks. I also noticed that their colors are off. And it's sinking in. It's sinking in. Okay. No, it's fine. We're fine. Everything's okay. I do not have to go back and change every single one of the portraits. It actually has to do... Okay. We are fine. But we're not fine. No! Okay, another thing I noticed is that the objectives is not there. So that's another one I'll go fix. And it should be active. It's just that I didn't tell it to display. Sometimes I forget about the stuff that I write. The ugly drawings are Tommy's. Maisie with her little smile. I know Tommy would agree if I invited Mr. Mustache. Okay. So the T set did not vanish. T set is meant to vanish. And that's because it's still on it. On the map. Which friend should I invite? Haven't seen you in a while, Sally Squeak. Okay, so everything seems pretty good with the door. Kinda nice to see when something goes flawlessly. Tommy's blue ball. One time he and Daddy was kicking the ball with each other and Tommy hit Daddy's funny part. I crash. I forgot it does that sometime. So fun fact, I don't know why this happens, but if you ever, like me, shove the RTP in its own folder, sometimes RPG Maker doesn't look into that folder. Sometimes it does. And when that happens, well, all you can do is be a lot sad. I believe it was one of the cusses. At least now I can test it with everything out here. Nice, now I got the objectives out there. And there is another thing I want to do, and that's to change this text speed from instant to just fast. Nice, it's also in green. Ah! This should not happen. What's going on? I know what's going on here. And it's the fact that the event takes up more than one square. And it's also set to same as character. So pretty much everything outside of the square kind of bleeds and overlays in an awkward way. You can't really see it here because we don't really clash. But it's technically also in front of Maisie. Like if I were to do something like that by making myself through. Yeah. So that's a bit of an issue, and I'm gonna have to think about that one. But for now, we are going to see if the rest works, which is assigning each of the seats. And it doesn't. Oh my god, it's actually super broken. No. I managed to do it! Oh my god. So as it turns out, Vigistella does work. It's just that to do it with show choices, you have to add this little code in here. Bam! That's pretty much it. They also have another one called hide switch, which is pretty much the opposite of what you see. If the switch is off, it will hide it. This one pretty much just says if the switch is on, it will show it. It's just that I investigated and found it a little bit late, but pretty much here it is. What I did was do a classic Google search, which eventually found me this forum, which eventually found me this example, which eventually found me over here. But, oh my god, make sure you have this little space. That is crucial. I did not have that space, and I was so confused for a while. I seriously spent like 10 minutes just staring at what I put, staring at what was over there, and was like, I can't see the difference. There is a space. I can see a space. And then, of course, until I actually went to the edit properties and I actually went in there, I was like, oh, there isn't a space. It looks like there's a space, but there wasn't a space. So make sure you add that space. But hey, you know what? It actually looks so much more cleaner and is a lot more better than having those conditional branches. As it so happens is that you can have multiple show choices. It's just that they have to be on the same indentation. And what I mean by indentation is, so this here is on the same indentation, but once you enter here, this is a new indentation. So if you had a conditional branch, it of course ruined that indentation. Anyway, right now it is 11:11. Make a wish. May this game do well. But I do have some plans for the day. I am going to hang out with a couple of buds, practice a little bit more One Piece before our big trip next weekend. But other than that, I think we're pretty much good. I think this is as far as I'll show you. Maybe I'll show you a couple of sneak peeks within this little scenario, but for the most part, I don't want to spoil too much since it is pretty story driven, so may have to wait till the actual game comes out. But I am going to go into secret mode as I script out the scenario. So if I do decide to show that, then you guys will see it after my One Piece trip. But if not, then thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the little One Piece trip that I comment on afterwards. But other than that, we're going to continue to chug along, going through one act after another, piecing it together little by little, adding little bits of features here and there as I go. Things tend to just pop up, like the holding progress bar. I totally didn't think about it too much before I jumped into the demo. It kind of just happened. And I'd say it worked out for the better. But with that said, if you haven't checked out the demo, then please do so. Please drop a comment on the game page, give it a rating. It actually helps a huge ton with getting my game on the front page of the search for RPG horror games or just horror games in general. So it would be very, very helpful if you guys did that, but I understand if not. A like for this video would also be very appreciated. Drop your comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, One Piece. One Piece, as you can imagine, was a lot of fun. It was me and 3 other friends. Shout out to my one friend who came out for the first time for the love of Kobe. Though overall, we didn't do too hot, and I did place the best at 178 out of roughly 1,200 people. Pricing was mediocre, as top 256 was the bottom bracket of price support, but overall, it was a fun experience of 10 incredible rounds. Food-wise, we got to enjoy some poutine, which was honestly pretty average compared to the place we got from Montreal. Portions were huge though. There was of course the usual post-regionals all-you-can-eat, but we arrived 20 minutes before the kitchen closed, so we had to order everything in one go. It felt like a secret boss after clearing the main game because of how much we ordered. As you can imagine, our abilities exploded trying to finish everything, but it was also a hilarious time. On day 2, we explored the city. There's a state katsu place called Gyukatsu Kyoto Katsugyu, and it was absolutely incredible. Shout out to my friend who sent us there. Nearby was a pride parade which we stumbled upon, and it was dope, so we stuck around for a bit. Then, for my own, didn't do as well as I wanted to do and thus need some personal healing by spending tons and tons of money, we went to a Genshin Impact pop-up shop. It was the last day, so like 90% of inventory had sold out. It's kinda sad, but I still managed to find some swag. before heading home, we had some dim sum, which was very, very tasty. Overall, it was a ton of fun. We also spent what felt like 10 hours road tripping each way. So shout out to this new game that came out on mobile called Persona 5X. It honestly kept me company the entire time. Not sponsored, by the way. Alright, thanks so much for watching, and see you on the next one. Later!